That high five.
Inside the 10, head first, he dives inside the 5-yard line. Rushing forward, ball comes out of the hands of Newton. It's on the ground and still on the ground. Picked up by T.J. Ward at the 4-yard line. Davis gets 19, and McCaffrey with a 19-yard reception. And Terrell again for at least 19 and more than that. Inside the 10, touchdown Denver. All week long, Marty Schottenheimer talked to his...
Manning out of the gun. Manning lets it fly. It's caught by Thomas. There's the record for Peyton Manning.
Saludos and salutations, Broncos country, and welcome to another exciting episode of Broncos Talk. I am your host, Adan Diaz, and joining me, as always, to my left this time is my co-host at Richie Rich. Richie, how you doing today?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing all right, Rich. Thank you so much. And Rich, before we get into the the recap of this Broncos game, just want to go over a couple of things with you because I know I always start off very excited and I kind of get tripped up over words. So just want to let every one of our viewers know that the Broncos Talk and the MHRT Network that is a fan-led Broncos-based podcast where we fill you in on all things Broncos news as well as other NFL news that goes around the league. Broncos Talk goes live every single Tuesday at 7654 on YouTube, Facebook, and other social media platforms. Guys, make sure that if you love this show, make sure you subscribe, hit that thumbs up so you get live notifications because it's not just Broncos Talk you guys can enjoy. On Thursdays, we have the MHRT Podcast, which goes live at 7654 on the exact same media streams with myself, my good boss, the boss, my Douglas Creevy, Glenn Hauser, and Mr. Boggins when he can come and, not have special guests come to take his place. And if that's not enough for you guys, for a third treat, we have the Nothing Rhymes with Orange and Blue podcast, which consists of our good friend Johnny Baki, who used to be on the show and we miss very dearly, as well as his co-host Isaiah Pookie, if I'm not mistaken. So make sure you guys check them out, subscribe. They go live 7654. Is it 7654? Same time as we do.
Yep.
And switch sides. Yeah, we did. So guys, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up button, subscribe so you get live notifications on when Broncos Talk goes live, when MHRT goes live, when Nothing Rhymes With goes live. And of course, if that's not enough incentive for you, Rich, we have The Neigh-borhood, which is a new show to MHRT that goes live just before 1 hour before every Broncos game. So make sure you guys subscribe so you can get live notifications when The Neigh-borhood goes on, so you can see all of our pretty faces. It's always a different cast. So make sure you guys subscribe, hit that thumbs up button. So without further ado, Rich, let's get into the big news, which is the Broncos are 3-0. It's amazing. I am so excited. I'm pumped because, and I'm pumped because it's great to start off, or to actually not just start, but finish the month of September in the win column, Rich, because for the longest time, the Broncos have just been in a bit of a drought in terms of, how they kind of giddy up out of the gate. And to go into 3, and you know what? And I'm also tired of hearing that just because the Broncos played the Jets, the Giants, and the Jaguars, 3 of the possibly the worst teams in the league right now, that, you can kind of put it like there's some sort of stain on it. To me, it's a little bit of an offense. So the Broncos didn't make their schedule. They got what was handed to them, and it's important that Denver went out there and they showed what they can do, which the offense, Teddy Bridgewater is doing a fantastic job leading this offense. No turnovers, putting the ball where it needs to be. And, of course, the defense is playing just almost lights out football. Von Miller, Pat Surtain, Bryce Callahan. Kyle Fuller started off a little shaky, but I believe he's coming along, Rich. Your thoughts?
Fuller, to call it a shaky start is being generous. It really is. I mean, I've always heard that those folks in Chicago are super nice and polite and all that good
We
stuff.
are.
And
We're good people.
it's one of the few cities in that Northeast I've never been to. I will make my way down there one of these days to the Windy City. However, to call what Fuller has done thus far as a shaky start. He had one or two good pass breakups, but he also had some pretty bad. He was pretty badly beaten on a few plays. I do, however, hope that what we see from Fuller is a slight building of confidence and perhaps some like kind of warming up of the football legs as the season goes on, and that he can improve. That being said, I do want to see it on film and want to see it on the field. Now, on the other side, what I do want to say is, can we all just thank Fangio and George Payton for not trading away Bryce Callahan?
Yeah.
I mean, has he ever had a series of 3 games here? I mean, what? Wow. Wow.
Yeah. A defensive-minded coach coming through in the clutch. Who would have thought?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Rich, before we go on and continue talking about the wonderful recap that was last Sunday, let's say hello to some of our awesome fans in the chat who have.
Can we highlight Travis's comment there first?
Sure.
Travis has joined us since the beginning here, and I think that's just a great comment. Travis, congratulations. Thank you for joining us yet again here on Broncos Talk. And
thank you, sir.
That's super exciting for you. I assume you're going with your family, not just yourself, although either would be fun. But obviously, it seems that your family are all Broncos fans too. So I hope it's a family affair. It is electric. And honestly, it is an experience that you will remember for years to come, being there at Mile High.
Exactly. Embrace it, Travis. Just get pumped up. The atmosphere alone is amazing. I'm telling you, I can still I can still feel it in my body, just reminiscing when I was there back in 2018. It almost feels like I was there yesterday. The Broncos fans are just some of the best fans, if not the best fans in the world. So with that said, Dave Glassman saying orange and blue. Hello, Dave. Good to see you. Mohammed Badri saying, sup, Dave and Richie. Mohammed, good to see you, my friend.
There's the little Badri right there in the picture there. That is awesome.
That's right.
I forgot. Congratulations. That must be the baby Mobad.
They grew up so fast.
Oh, it's crazy.
Very adorable. Cute kid. Avatar saying, what's up, Broncos country? What's up, Avatar? Good to see you, my friend. Gary Neighbor saying, go Broncos country. Number 1, 3-0. That's exactly right. Who else do we got in here, Rich? I think I saw the boss. Johnny Baki
in here
saying 3-0. Let me freaking hear you, Broncos country. That's exactly right. Make some noise, Broncos country. And the boss said, squee. I don't know if he meant to say squeal or squee, but.
Now, there is a line, and it's from South Park, and it says something to the effect of drugs are bad, MK. And I thought that's rather fitting given the fact that that's the only thing that's posted in the chat.
Oh, man. Shadowjacker, the host of Broncos Talk After Dark, or is
awesome.
it MHRT? He's in charge of one of our After Dark shows.
Or all of them.
Yeah, or all of them.
Yeah.
He's saying, hello, Broncos country. Hello to you, Shadowjacker. Good to see you, my friend. And, of course, Travis Tarbox, who we talked about earlier. So, Richie, going back to the recap of this past Sunday, I got to tell you, even though the score, I don't think anybody on the MHRT network actually got close to. I'm trying to remember. I can't remember everybody's score, but I don't think anybody was close to what the actual score was. Maybe
I thought Glassman was.
Maybe Glassman.
I thought Glassman on the neighborhood. I thought he was pretty close.
Okay, I knew I missed one. I wasn't sure. I went and I rewatched all the videos today, and I was like, damn it, I know I'm going to forget one, and I knew it was Dave. So, Dave, I do apologize. The boss says Glenn was close. So, it was just, it was a great game. It was everything that, just the Broncos being at home, you can feel the team spirit was at an all-time high. And, obviously we're going to get into the injuries that happened a little bit, but Richie, and you and I talked about this before the show. I wanted to kind of concentrate towards the positives of this game, which was seeing the return of one Von Miller. I mean, if you thought Von Miller was good against the Giants and against the Jacksonville, against the Jets, Von was just, I mean, amazing. He was where he needed to be. He put pressure when he needed pressure. And when he got home, man, did he get home and he made an impact. And it was a really, really big, nice welcome gift to the rookie, Zach Wilson.
So I'm seeing some comments in here that are going to be stealing some of my Mile High Mountain picks. So I'm going to intentionally curb my feeding into my, building up my responses for some of those to try and save some of those comments for a little bit later on in the pod. I agree. I think if anything, you're seeing Vaughn look kind of more 3-4 years ago kind of version of himself, maybe like the 2015, 2016 kind of version of Vaughn, where you start to notice him kind of being the guy in the game, that one that you notice getting around the edge and getting to the quarterback. I would argue almost so much so that he's one of the few guys that you do notice making a direct impact almost every single play. And I mean, in some respects, you say, yes, he's on our team. And then you start to then come back down to earth and say, oh my gosh, he's on the last year of his deal.
Yeah.
and then you start to realize that if he's the one that's getting to the quarterback consistently or getting those pressures consistently, especially at the rate that he is, I mean, we really probably need to start talking to him whether or not he's willing to come back on even an early contract to maybe give him and his family some security if he's willing to do it for us.
I think that Von Miller is going to come back as a Bronco because, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people have heard me say this, he's even said it himself that he wants to be a Bronco for life. So I think right now Von's at a stage in his life against where he was 5-6 years ago after the Broncos won the Super Bowl, where he's made his money. He's going to be a Hall of Famer for sure. That's without a doubt. So I don't see him going into contract negotiations trying to demand even more money than what he was getting before. And this is just my hypothetical thinking. I'm not saying it's actually true or whatever. This is just me thinking what's going to happen. I just think that Von, and he's a father now, so he's going to want to set the best example he can for his son. So and I'm going to hold him to it. If he says he wants to be a Bronco for life, I really do hope he can find a middle ground with George Payton and anybody else in the Broncos front office to say, hey, look, I want to stay here. I want to retire in Denver and hell, maybe even coach on the team one day. Who knows? But I think that he would like to try to work a deal where he can end his career where it started here in Denver.
I think that'd be great. I really do. And frankly, despite his injuries, we've seen him being able to come back this year, stay healthy, for the first 3 games here, and look at that upper tier of a player again, which, I mean, to be honest, he kind of struggled with the last few years and likely, as a result of coming off those injuries. But his injury was so bad in the early stage of last year, but he was basically fully recovered at the back end of last year and could have come back if we needed him. So I think he's had a really, really extended period of time to get his body right. And at someone at his age, I'm not saying he's old, but he's certainly not young by NFL standards. That actually is a pretty big deal. He hasn't gone so far out of it where he's out of shape, kind of like what Josh Gordon had when he was out of the league for those, quite a number of those years. Mm-hmm. But he was able to get his body healthy again.
Right.
And that is a big deal. I'm seeing a few numbers being thrown out here and a few players. 2 years, $30 million, call it a day.
Yeah. Before you continue, I just want to say, Mike 5.56. I don't remember ever seeing you in the chat. So if you're new, welcome to the show, my friend. It's good to have you.
I appreciate it, Mike.
And
if you're not subscribed, we'd certainly greatly appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing several of your comments. You'll hear a little bit more about a couple of them a little later on from me in particular. Mm-hmm. And I won't elaborate anymore. But yeah, 3 for 45 might be something that Miller may be more interested in. although I think you need to be realistic, is that the cap is going up, and Miller would likely get somewhere in the 20 to 21 range, in my opinion, from other teams. So we are going to need to remain somewhat competitive on that front. So perhaps we might be willing to look to Vaughn to say, take an 18 to 19 million a year as an average per year, with the last year not guaranteed, but then add in perhaps some richer sack escalators if he can maybe get to the quarterback and hit certain stats.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally agree with you, Rich. And I think I think they can work something out, but and right now Von Miller needs to be great because we don't have Bradley Chubb. Bradley Chubb's going to be sidelined for a little bit. So the burden falls on Malik Reed, who had a really good game. If I'm not mistaken, I believe he had a sack and he had a couple of tackles for a loss. So, Malik Reed is coming along. He's starting to develop into a really good edge rusher. So he has some big shoes to fill in the absence of one Bradley Chubb, but I think he's doing a really good job. And I mean, all around, Justin Simmons had an interception in this game. I mean, it was just beautiful. And then again, and Caden Stern's interception, even though it wasn't intended for him, and a lot of people are trying to say, "Oh, it's a garbage time interception." Don't try to take that away from him. I mean, the man was just he was where he needed to be. That interception to him goes a long way. I was really happy to see him get some playing, not only just playing time, but he caught his very first interception. And even though it was in garbage time, it really doesn't matter. His spirits were all high. And to me, that's a really good sign because, going into the coming weeks, Richie, we're kind of going into uncharted territories in the words that we're not on easy street. Okay. So, no more garbage teams, no more Jets, no more Giants, no more Jags. We're going to deal with Baltimore, who we're going to talk about later on in the show, and then the Steelers and those pesky Raiders. So it's going to get hard, Rich, and we need everybody in this roster, whether they're first or second, to step their game up when it's their time to shine.
So I thought there's an interesting comment here. Do I think Vaughn will take a pay cut to help Chubb and Sutton get paid? I'm going to say likely no. And I'm going to say likely no based on the premise of basically based on the comment that 6'10" you made a little bit earlier in the show, which was he has a son now, and he's no longer just a single guy looking to have a chicken farm or 2 or 5. He is very seriously looking to get a reasonable salary to ensure that he gets long-term security for his family, which includes his son. And if he does ever get married or what have you, and go down that route, or have other kids, make sure that they're well taken care of as well. So I'm going to say probably not. The other thing with Chubb is, as much as you hear such great things about him within the locker room and from the team, you do have to start looking at his injury history and seeing what we did with Jake Butt. We may have Chubb come back on a prove it kind of 5th-year option because it's probably reasonably priced if he can stay healthy, and that would be good value for us. But I think we would be very, very hard pressed to justify paying Chubb any kind of top of market deal, which if he has a good year in that last year of his contract on the 5th-year option, he's going to try to command. And I'm just not sure George Paton will be willing to pay that number, especially if we re-up Vaughn and we already have one of those bookends making that kind of top tier salary or close to it.
Yeah. I'm just like, I kind of want to believe it, but at the same time, I don't really want to believe it, Richie, because I love Chubb. I think Bradley Chubb was a fantastic pick in the draft. And there's a lot of people in Broncos country who feel the exact same way. They love the energy that Bradley Chubb has brought, and just the thought of him and Von Miller on the field at the same time. They're a wrecking ball tandem type of duo. But on the other hand, as much as we appreciate and love what Bradley Chubb has done or can do for the team, those lingering injuries, they kind of just start creeping up on you. And the sad thing is that this latest injury kind of with every single injury, mind you, it takes a divot when it comes time to contract talks and negotiations, because
It does.
the Broncos are just going to kind of keep tabs, and it's like, well, and this season you only played this many times and you were out this many times, and in the season before that you were this and this, and then so it's just kind of dumb it down, where it's like the Broncos are kind of just rethink their investment, where it's not like Von Miller, like we're going to give Von Miller money because we know what we're going to get out of him, and Von Miller is not injury prone. Whereas Bradley Chubb, it's like the Broncos are going to have to really sit down and think, is it really worth to invest a lot of money in a Bradley Chubb, or will Chubb take a prove-it contract, like you said, and play a whole season and prove to the Broncos that, hey, look, I can still go. I'm going to be at 100%. I can still be that guy. So, just give me a chance. And then the Broncos will have to decide whether to take the risk or not.
Right. In my opinion, just to speak to that, and I do want to get to this question, this kind of point here by Mike, is in order for Bradley Chubb to kind of get that next level deal in terms of that kind of top of market, or maybe close to it in terms of pass rush contract from the Broncos, in my opinion, what you're going to have to see from him is like a mid double digit sack year next season from him, and the ability to stay healthy throughout the season in order for him to really kind of be considered for that bigger contract. Because at the end of the day, he had that one good year, and then he's been basically injured on and off with average to okay performances thereafter. Albeit last season when Vaughn was hurt, Chubb was pretty heavily double teamed, and that's, you can kind of see that from the stats, which did slow him down a little. The other challenge that I have with Chubb is he's more of that Khalil Mack kind of power rusher, as opposed to Vaughn being a speed guy who can also then kind of bulk up a little bit, which is what we've seen from Vaughn in these latter years. And that leads me into Mike's comment here, which is, I love Vaughn and I won't take anything away from him, but you can tell he's lost his bend. Still a great rusher, but a few of those sacks were coverage sacks. Well, while I would agree that a couple of those sacks were, due to, decent coverage, so are most sacks that most NFL rushers make, with the exception of some of the interior rushers like an Aaron Donald, who are so close to where the quarterback is that they just basically blow past the center and then smash the quarterback down to the ground. Most of the edge rushers, in terms of their speed getting to the quarterback, when they are covered even a little bit, is as a result of at least some modestly decent coverage. Now, I understand what you're saying is that when it's like 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 5 seconds, and then Vaughn sacks, the quarterback, that's what you would typically deem as a coverage sack. On the flip side to some of those comments in terms of losing his bend, I completely concede that, and I agree with you. He has lost that bend and that flex that you saw from him so many years ago, especially in that 2015 and 2014 season where you saw him, he was like Gumby out there. It was ridiculous. And he's made up for that with strength, though. And that's kind of what I spoke to earlier when I was talking about Bradley Chubb. Vaughn is physically bulked up to try to make up for the fact that he realizes that he's lost some of that quick twitch that he once had. And that's why you're seeing the productivity out of him this year that you maybe didn't see out of him a couple of years ago.
You know what, Mike? I'm kind of have to... I don't know. I don't really so much agree with you as much as I disagree. But I'm going to go out and say I don't fully agree with that comment. And here's the reason why. Because while I do agree that Von Miller has, obviously he's not the same pass rusher he was 2015, but that happens with every single pass rusher in the league. Obviously, every player starts to lose their spin. They start to lose their bend. They start to lose their edge, their speed, or everything starts to diminish. But that's what happens when you age. That's for any human being. Okay. So that part's pretty obvious. But the fact that offensive lines and coaches still have to double team Von Miller tells you that he is still a presence, he is still a danger, and he is still a monster. Okay? So if that were the case, if Von actually did lose his bend, like for sure, and he wasn't a great rusher anymore, offensive lines would not have to be offering double coverage on Von Miller. And I've seen it over the last 2 games. The Giants game, I can't remember if he was actually double teamed, but I'm pretty sure he was. And when an offensive line has to double team Vaughn, that gives the opposite pass rusher more time for them to shine and to be amazing. There's no reason for that other guy to not get to the quarterback if Vaughn himself can't do it. So
right.
As time goes along, Mike, I'm pretty sure that, obviously all that's going to start to dwindle, and there's going to be a time to, like with DeMarcus Ware, we saw with Ware after the championship season. But I'm pretty sure that he probably still thought he could maybe go one more year, maybe not a whole full season, maybe as a rotational pass rusher, but he could have probably played one more season.
Ware actually said that.
Yeah, and he actually did.
Ware actually said that. He said, I can go another season. He said, however, I feel really good. And he said, I've seen what other guys do when they try to play until the wheels fall off. So he said, at this stage here, I feel good and I'm not in any pain at all. So he said, it's kind of time for me. And basically, when you have a guy like that who's already saying, hey, wouldn't it be nice to retire? Their head's really not in it anymore. And you've heard that comment that I just made from multiple players. Shannon Sharpe is actually one of them who said it too. When the guy is talking about retirement, he's basically retired. I'm pretty sure Shannon Sharpe was the one who said that.
Yeah, and that's actually true. So, we are concentrating a little bit on the defense, folks, and we do apologize. So we're going to try to rotate gears in terms of this recap and talk about the offense. And we might as well get into the injury front here, Rich, as we get towards the midpoint of the show. Losing KJ Hamler was a really, really devastating blow to this Broncos offense. And while the Broncos do have depth, it kind of starts the trade they made before the beginning of the season with Trinity Benson. The con side of that is starting to kind of rear its ugly head because the Broncos won't see the benefit of that trade until this coming draft. But that's in the future. Right now, the Broncos need a guy that can try maybe be as fast as Hamler, which is saying a lot because Hamler is a really, really fast wide receiver when he can get, hit that post route the way he's supposed to. So with that being said, Bridgewater is excellent because the weapons around him are excellent. Let's make that clear. So right now, Vic Fangio and Pat Shurmur need to make sure that Teddy Bridgewater keeps being surrounded with those weapons that have made Bridgewater a really, really good looking quarterback out on the field, especially with this upcoming game against the Ravens, because I'll actually give credit to what's his name? Colin, I forget his last name. But he had the Broncos up on the top
Colin
10.
Cowherd.
Colin Cowherd, thank you. I was drawing a blank. He actually had Denver as the number 4th best team on his list. So Denver's slowly moving up. And he didn't even mention that, that it was because Denver played 3 crappy teams. He actually gave credit where credit was due. And he still doesn't believe in Drew Lock. So, let's get that out of the way. We're still.
Oh, you want to see Cowherd change his opinion, have Teddy turn his hat backwards, and then Colin will just have us tanking to the bottom of the NFL. Probably.
If the Broncos do lose this Sunday, I'm pretty sure Denver's not even going to be on that board. So hopefully it doesn't come to that. But I'll take all the credit that I can get from a guy like Colin Cowherd who can change his mind on a dime, apparently. So all the credit goes to Bridgewater because he hasn't had any turnovers. He goes through his reads. When he gets sacked, he doesn't fumble the ball. He knows, like, okay, there wasn't a play there. I couldn't make a play. He doesn't force the ball where it doesn't need to be, which is actually a really big improvement from where he was last year in Carolina, where him and Drew Lock kind of looked like they were playing the same style of football, where it was just heaving to the ball and hoping that, their wide receiver caught it and not the opposing cornerback.
So we have KJ's injury. Now, this might be too soon, but at least it wasn't his Hamler string. But I feel really bad for him. I really do, because he he had those injury issues with like his hamstring that didn't seem to be kind of coming back into its own. And he seemed to finally have gotten over that. Like for whatever reason, it took him forever to get that hamstring back. And then it seems that he finally got it. And then that happens. It killed me to see him go down like that. Now, I will say that I was not overly impressed with the ball that was thrown to KJ on that play. And if, in my opinion, if you are going to critique Drew for ball placement, for example, that Jake Butt interception last year where he threw to the inside shoulder rather than the outside shoulder and it got intercepted in that, I can't remember which game it was, to Jake Butt, but we came on Broncos Talk and we spoke about it last season. If we're going to be critical of plays like that from Drew Lock, then I think it's also fair for us to be critical of plays like that when Teddy throws them. Because if you have a receiver who's speedy and you're not throwing him in stride, you can get guys hurt. And we just need to be very, very careful in terms of ball placement when it comes to situations like that. To step into that throw, to make sure you try to throw a guy in stride. And this is also one of the challenges of having a new quarterback and new wide receivers. They are still learning each other. They are still figuring stuff out.
Right. And of course, the boss says, segue. I think the Ravens aren't as good a team as we think they are. Good teams blow out bad teams, and the Ravens barely beat out the Lions. What does that tell you? Well, you know what, boss? That's actually a really good point. And I'm probably going to have a talk with my brother about this after the show, because I'm pretty sure he was so excited he would have been so happy and thrilled to say, hey, at least the Lions beat the Ravens. And then Justin Tucker pulls out the Superman cape and just hits a 66-yard field goal, which is just unbelievably amazing in all its right, and keeps the Ravens postseason hopes alive currently, even on week 3. But I do agree with you here, boss. And so far, what we've seen all around the league is pretty amazing, which is, and it tells you one thing, that all the teams from last year that were dominant, that made the playoffs and looked like they were Super Bowl bound, with the exception of like one or two that I can think off the top of my head, all the others are pretty much not in that category. Kansas City is currently in the basement where we've been living for the last couple of months. So that's great news. The Raiders are just barely in front of the Broncos in division standings in first place, which nobody saw. And, you have teams like Carolina, who's undefeated, the Rams with Matthew Stafford, and, so forth. And the Ravens, who have one of the biggest injury lists this season so far. But it's because of Lamar Jackson that the Ravens aren't without with only single losses like the other teams. So if the Raiders can keep Lamar Jackson bottled up and keep him from being just who Lamar Jackson is, Richie, I believe that Denver can do just as good a job, if not better, in terms of not only forcing Lamar Jackson to throw the ball in uncompromising positions, but to secure a win against the Ravens and finally put some respect in our name going forward this season.
So I'm going to do my best to do a 1 foot in of the segue and 1 foot out, and then go right over to that Ravens. So,
okay.
With regards to this, the injury there, the Broncos did make some roster moves today in terms of attempting to compensate for that KJ Hamler injury. And it looks like they tried to do it as early as possible, likely because they want to try and get whoever they bring in or whatever they choose to do as close to up to speed as they possibly can to allow them to get some playing time against the Ravens. So I expect maybe a kind of a pared down package set for maybe whomever they bring in. And the gentleman that they brought into our team was a wide receiver by the name of David Moore from the Raiders practice squad. David Moore is a speedster. similar to KJ Hamler, but obviously will not be KJ Hamler, but a similar kind of general mold to KJ Hamler. Ran, if I remember reading correctly, it was a 4.43 40 time, and is known for those kind of quick, shifty kind of routes and whatnot. So I think from a speed perspective, George Payton and the Denver Broncos opted to go outside of our practice squad to try and replace someone like KJ. And they also went with a guy like David Moore because I believe he has like several years in the league. I think it's 4, maybe something like that.
Yeah,
5
4 or
years of
5.
experience.
His name has bounced around the league.
Right. So, they wanted someone with a little bit of experience so that they could kind of get him up to speed faster than, say, a younger guy that's only like a rookie or 2 years in the league. As corresponding moves to there, we placed KJ Hamler and linebacker Jonas Griffith on injured reserve. Based on the information that I've been reading, Jonas Griffith was placed on a short-term IR, which will have him be able to come back onto the roster later on in the year. And last but not least, unrelated to the game that we had against the Jets and injuries, is the Denver Broncos had a team who, if you read some reports, was the Browns. And then there was correction reports that were kind of shared and tweeted out by Mike Kliss and whatnot, which lends me to believe that the Mike Kliss report is probably the more accurate of the two, which was the Houston Texans were very quickly pushing to rip Brett Rippon off of our practice squad, and the Denver Broncos signed him to our active 53 in a corresponding protective move to ensure that he was not poached. That actually was one of the more interesting moves of the day and of this week thus far for me, because it did shed a little bit of light in terms of what the Broncos really think of Brett.
Yeah. You know what? I'm surprised. Somebody on this team really must like what they see in Brett Rippon, because, I mean, the last time he suited up, if I'm not mistaken, was against the Jets last season. And, he looked, that first half, he looked amazing. And then that second half is, it came down a lot closer than it should have been. And the Jets were just about as bad a team last year as they, if not worse this year. But I can see why, if the Broncos pull a roster move like that and make sure that Brett Rippon stays in Denver, it just goes to show you that the market for quarterbacks, whether they be second or third string, it's really tight, especially with a team like Houston, who losing Tyrod Taylor and not being able to activate their other big money quarterback. And I have a feeling that they're just going to be picking at straws, trying to see who maybe they'll trade for one before the deadline in week 8. Otherwise, they'll just be rotating quarterbacks from practice squads or free agents or what have you, just trying to, if they're running for their division, in terms of they have a chance to make a wild card spot or whatever. But
Right.
Those are the kind of teams you have to watch out for, Rich, because those are the ones that can really go out and surprise the hell out of you.
They can.
In a blink of an eye.
To me, Brett, when I see him play and how I saw him throw the ball and the way that he had a command of kind of protections and whatnot, I actually think he makes a great backup for Teddy Bridgewater. Mm-hmm. I really do. When you look at the way that he kind of just holds himself on the field, I think Brett is an ideal backup for Teddy Bridgewater, because I believe they play the game in a similar way. Whereas they don't have that bombs away down the field, but I do think that they have very, very similar football styles in terms of how they play. If they need to shimmy out of the pocket, they can, but by and large, they like to stay in the pocket and throw the ball, and they like to use their heads, cerebral, Peyton almost did, although Peyton is nowhere near as mobile as either of them. They like to use their minds to kind of shift protections to try and get themselves into a certain play, and they're reliant on those skill position guys to make the extra yards after catch and whatnot. And they do their best to catch those guys in stride when and where they can.
Yeah, but let's not get ahead of ourselves, Richie. While Brett Rippon would make a decent backup quarterback, at the current moment, Drew Lock is the number 2. So until hopefully nothing changes that, to be honest with you, because as much respect I have for Brett Rippon for stepping up last season, putting the season in his hands at any type of stage in the season is that's too much of a big of a risk, even with the great defense that Denver has. So I believe that as long as Teddy Bridgewater can keep continuing doing what he's doing and inspiring this team, keeping the hope and the faith alive, and just going out there and being just amazing in short words,
Right.
I really do believe that the Broncos can get an upset win over Baltimore.
I think we can too. Now, we're running kind of near the back end of the show here, and we have the Hot 5 segment coming up for everybody here. I thought it would be a good time for us to quickly run through the Mile High Mountain.
Sure.
Do you want to give us your Mile High Mountain picks, both the top of the summit and those that decided to stick back at base camp?
Well, I mean, for offensively, I think I'm going to have to go again with Bridgewater because he played a really good game. He didn't, once again, no turnovers. He did take a couple of sacks, but with the offensive line kind of, I wouldn't say struggling, but there were guys that were kind of reshuffling. Quentin Miners finally got his first NFL start in the game as well, and Neigh Moody finally came back in and getting his, was it second or third start of the season. So, but a close second to that was Tim Patrick. I mean, Tim Patrick stepping up in the absence of Jerry Jeudy, and now he's going to have to step up even more for KJ Hamler. Tim Patrick was great. I mean, that man can make so many catches. And Courtland Sutton was the star attraction for the safeties and the cornerbacks. So Courtland Sutton was getting double coverage a lot, which just left guys like Fant and Tim Patrick open to run their routes, their slants and cut routes or whatever, and just get open. So either one would probably make a suitable start for the Mile High Mountain, the top on the offense. On the defense, it's probably going to have to be Von Miller because I just love what I saw from him out there that day. It was great. Second, probably close to behind Von Miller would be Justin Simmons on that interception, which was great. And, Caden Stearns would probably be my honorable mention because he also got that interception that we talked about at the beginning of the show, Rich.
So I'd like to hear what everyone else like to, in terms of what their Mile High Mountain is, the two at the summit and two at the base camp. So you want to go ahead and leave those comments here. And for those that are joining us after the fact, leave a comment below the video. I'd love to see what you guys think as well. With regards to my Mile High Mountain, I have Javonte Williams, as my Mile High Mountain with his touchdown as well as just his overall run. I felt that he really Pookie Williams. Let's go ahead and go that one. I'll go ahead and use the nickname in the locker room. I really thought that Pookie Williams really stood out to me watching him play, and as much as it surprises me to say it, he really does look a little bit better than Melvin Gordon right now. And so I'd say as a second round pick, good job. My other one on Rich, my Mile High Mountain is Quinn Miners.
Rich, before you continue, let me just say correction, the boss correcting me. Neither one started. They came in during the game for an injured Glasgow and Reisner. So I stand corrected. Neigh Moody and Miners didn't start. They came in for two injured linemen.
Correct. Glasgow got injured first, and then Moody came in to fill his shoes. Yeah. And from there, actually only a few short plays later, to be quite honest, Reisner got hurt, and then Miners came in. And that is a perfect segue. Oh, come on, where's the shout out? That's a perfect segue to my second Mile High summit, which is Quinn Miners. There was such a notable difference on the left-hand side of the line when Miners came in and replaced Dalton Reisner. We saw, thank you. We saw such a marked improvement on the left-hand side of the line with Miners in there. He has clearly been absorbing the coaching from our offensive line coach in Munchak. So I just want to give all the credit in the world because we saw Miners step in preseason and he looked like he needed work. You saw him step in a real NFL game, not preseason, And yes, I realize the Jets don't have a great record, but they do have a good interior defensive line. And so Miners really did hold his own. And I really think he should be playing, at least a few games at minimum to see if that wasn't, if that's not the norm for him going forward, because that would really, really help our run game on the left-hand side of the line. My base camp, I got 2. Dalton Reisner, as much as I don't want to throw an injured guy under the bus, my comments here are not only predicated on the Jets game, it's also for what I've seen from him since the beginning of the season. I really think that he's struggled a little bit on the left-hand side of the line, and it really pains me to say it because I really like him as a Bronco, and I really like him as a guy. So I really do wish him all the best in recovery, and I hope he recovers quickly, and hopefully he comes back and looks like a different player on the field. And the very bottom of my Mile High Mountain is Tom McMahon. When you have to instruct your kicker to kick the ball out of the back of the end zone because you can't cover those kicks, that's got to stop. You got to get him gone.
Hey, you know what? I'm going to have to actually disagree with you on that, Rich, because on a lot of takeaways list that I saw, and I'm surprised that they beat me to it, a lot of analysts actually were in favor of that and actually gave credit to the special teams kicking the ball out of bounds. And not only that, but Brandon McManus,
because they couldn't actually stop them.
Right, but I would so much rather them kick the ball out than to give the ball to one of their best punt returners, because the last thing you need is to happen to us what happened to us against Jacksonville, where they ran the ball and gave the Jacksonville Jaguars hope, versus also what the Jaguars did to the Cardinals this past weekend, where they had 109 return for a touchdown on special teams when the kicker missed the kick. So I'm not saying it's the perfect answer, but it's better than what McMahon has been giving us the last 2 or 3 weeks.
So what that just basically means is you're saying Tom McMahon is so bad at coaching the special teams that rather than us getting rid of him and bringing in a more competent coach, that it's okay because he's just having our kicker kick the ball out the end zone, and that's an ample and absolution. See, to me, I don't think that's necessarily the right way to go, and that's kind of why I have him at the bottom. And there is a comment here from Mr. Johnny Baki, which I agree with, because we're getting right near the end, so we want to make sure we get to our hot 5, which is Noah Fant. He's my honorable mention at base camp. I really did not like the way he played this past game. And dare I say it, Saubert actually looked better than Fant did on the field because he's able to both run block and kind of bounce out and catch those kind of short, flat passes that you need to see from a guy like Noah Fant as well. So really, I have to give Saubert all the credit in the world for the way he's playing.
Yeah, well, I mean, and going back to your comment earlier about Tom McMahon, if the Broncos won't fire Tom McMahon for playing crappy special teams, and I'll take whatever we can get that doesn't put our special teams, our defense, and our offense in tight jams. Again, I'm going to reiterate the Jacksonville game. That game, special teams should have kept that ball on their side of the field so the defense can go out and work. They should not be giving up punt return touchdowns and just keeping games closer than they need to be. And people will say that right now it's early. So it's just I'll take it. Basically, that's what I'm just trying to tell you, Rich. I'll take whatever, as long as they don't give the touchdown. Okay. So I was gonna actually highlight the comment from Avatar where his base camp pick was Kyle Fuller on defense. We did kind of joke around at the beginning of the show, Rich, where we said that Fuller is. I thought he was turning around for a little bit better. At least this time, he didn't give up any huge plays, and hopefully, he doesn't prove me wrong when I said he needs time to gel and get to know this offense. But for a guy who's played under the Vic Fangio defense before, Rich, it shouldn't be taking him this long to figure things out. So that 1-year deal for him could spell some trouble for him if his gameplay doesn't improve.
I agree. He could be playing himself out of a bigger contract at this point, right? He came into us saying, "Oh, that's a steal because he's such a good player," and he could be kind of sliding down there. We are getting near the end, and we're going to get to our Hot 5 segment here. So in a video here, we have our 2 Ravens guests who joined us earlier and gave their Hot 5 takes on what the Ravens need to do to beat our Denver Broncos. Our first guest is Ravens superfan Captain Dee-fense. His resume, and wow, is it a lengthy one, is he is a supporter of the Caring Communities charity. Links are in the description. That is a charity that Captain Dee-fense holds near and dear. Please check out the link in the description. And I've asked him to send me that link, and I will be tweeting it out once I get it. He is in the Ford Hall of Fans. He's in the nominee class there. He is in the ESPN inaugural Hall of Fans 2012 inductee. He is in the Pro Football Hall of Fans 2002 inductee. He is a member of the Pro Football Ultimate Fan Association, Vice Sports Hall of Fandom, and Maxim's list of 9 signature NFL fans. You can find Captain Dee-fense at DCapped on Twitter and on Facebook at Captain Dee-fense. That's DEEFENSE. And our second Ravens guest for the Hot 5 segment here is ingravenVids. ingravenVids is a YouTube channel that is all mostly Ravens content and bounces around a little bit around the NFL. They are a YouTube channel with 45,000 subscribers on YouTube. That's 45,000 subscribers on YouTube. So please go ahead and check that YouTube channel out. Not before you finish this video, though, please. And on Twitter at ingravenVids. So without further ado, here's the Hot 5.
Well, number one for me is our bread and butter is running the ball. You know, we need to run the ball. And I think we've been averaging over 200 yards, but I think we're at 175 yards. So we need to run the ball. Number two, the pass dance. The pass game need to get better. It looks like we've been getting killed on the intermediate routes just behind the linebackers. Waller and Travis Kelce, granted, two top five tight ends, killed us the first 2 games, but looks like we held Hockenson okay. But yesterday in the second half, they started moving the ball downfield, throwing the ball to the receivers, throwing the intermediate routes. In the first half, they were throwing the big plays, but they scaled down the offense in the second half and they moved down the field. So we need to control the intermediate pass. The next thing is, Cortland is their go-to guy. So we need to be aware of where he's at. And I see Tim Patrick had a good yesterday, but control that. Number one. And number 3 is we can't be turning the ball over. You know, our offense not built to recover from turning the ball over. And then we need to wait for Rashad Bateman to come back and our other injuries. Once he comes back, I think the offense would open up. And I don't think Hollywood Brown's going to have a game like he had yesterday. And Hollywood Brown was wide open. He stretched the fields. So that's about my 5 keys. But the key is go to bread and butter first. That's what we need to do is run the ball. And the defense need to step up. We can't be ranked 29th in defense. So those are my 5.
Yeah, and just to start off, like my guy Captain Dee-fense says, defense, you can't leave home without it. So my number 1 would be the defense. The defense hitting Teddy Bridgewater. You cannot let him get into a rhythm. And I think with Teddy Bridgewater throughout his career, the only thing that's really held him back were 2 things have been injury and opportunity. But now he's getting that opportunity because he's injury free. And the Broncos are 3-0. So you got to get to Teddy Bridgewater. And Wink, he's going to bring the blitz. But he needs to make sure that it gets there. He finds a way for it to get there, because that's important. Number 2, I would say second half adjustments, because second half adjustments, they're so big in the NFL. Because in the first half, if something's working either for you or working against you, then you want to find out how to either keep it working, continue it to work, have it continue to work, or if it's working against you, then have it just, you need to correct it. So that will be number 2. For number 3, keeping Lamar Jackson upright. In the game against the Lions, he got sacked 4 times. And for Lamar Jackson, if a quarterback like Lamar Jackson is getting sacked 4 times in a game like that lets you know that these are guys coming in free. Because Lamar Jackson, he can evade pressure, he can make guys miss and whatnot. But if he's being sacked 4 times, then guys aren't even getting blocked. The number 4 would be for the passing game to continue doing what it's been doing. The passing game has been pretty good. Yesterday, it was rough because Lamar was putting everything on the money, but Hollywood had probably his worst game in his career, maybe, because of the drops, because they were huge drops. He dropped 2 touchdowns and then dropped another big play. And like Captain Defense said, we don't expect that to be a regular or normal thing, and we definitely expect him to bounce back because he's been showing like he can beat defenses, and he's every game, especially the past 2 games, he's been beating these defenses big time. He's been getting open, and he's been making stuff happen. So that's important that continues. And number 5 is last but certainly not least would be that the Ravens, they score touchdowns and not field goals. Because if you say, for instance, like even yesterday, your offense is moving down the field, because the offense was moving. There was never really a time during the game where the Ravens offense like just completely stalled out. But I would say for they need to score touchdowns though, because if your offense is moving down the field, they keep getting first down. But then in the red zone, you got to settle for a field goal. That keeps the other team in the game. Because if you're just scoring field goals and the other team scores a touchdown, they're right back in it. So it's very important that the Ravens, they put up touchdowns against the Broncos and don't settle for 3.
Well, Rich, I got to tell you, those were some really good insights.
They were.
Shout out and thanks to Captain D and I forget the name of
ingravenVids.
ingravenVids. Thank you,
gentleman there at the end. There, he great guy. Really liked him. Both of them actually.
Thank you guys for taking time out to make that video and letting us know, giving us your top 5. So, with that being said, Rich, the one thing that probably worries me the most about Lamar Jackson is containing Lamar Jackson. If Josie Jewell was still playing, I'd feel a lot more confident. Not that I'm saying I don't have confidence in Alexander Johnson, which I do, but Alexander Johnson is one man, and he can't cover the entire field. And Justin Sternad is going to have to he's going to have to step up his game. He's really going to be challenged because I don't believe he's faced anybody as quick, as agile, and as deceiving as Lamar Jackson is. And Lamar Jackson, if you give him 1 yard, he's going to take a mile and run like the Roadrunner with it. So keeping Lamar Jackson contained needs to be priority number 1 for the Broncos. That defensive line has to try to keep that line closed, where if you're going to make Lamar Jackson run, try to make him run towards the sides where he has to kind of angle out and pick up speed and give the linebackers a chance to get to him and not cut in between the gaps, because that's where Lamar Jackson is most dangerous, when he can run in between the tackles and run upfield and get a conversion for first downs.
I actually think, if I can bring up WizKid's comment here, and for those that don't know who WizKid is, that is Mr. Landon Clark. I actually don't think we necessarily need to employ a QB spy early in the game. I think we may need to revert to that if he's starting to beat us badly and whatnot. And that could be some of our second half or even in-game adjustments to ensure that we keep Lamar contained. My key to the game, in fact, the biggest key for me for this game, is defensive line pressure. We need to beat our man in the at the defensive line position, particularly in the interior of the defensive line. We need to clog those run holes, and we need to get penetration in the against their guards and against their centers. In fact, it's almost what we've seen as a weakness on the Broncos offensive line. We need to try and push and exploit the interior of the Ravens offensive line, which will push Lamar Jackson and force him to move and not throw, and then we can target and go after him.
Yeah, Brandon Gonzalez jumping in. Brandon, good to see you, my friend. He says, I think Lamar will have a hard time not getting sacked. Patrick Surtain will have 2 interceptions, is his prediction. Now, I believe that Patrick Surtain is due for a really big game. And this game could be the one, because one of the things that I noticed from the last 3 games from Lamar Jackson is his go-to guy has mostly been Hollywood Brown,
It has.
as our 2 friends and the Hot 5 mentioned. But if you take that away from him, last year his tight end was pretty much his go-to guy, and I forget his name, but
Andrews.
Thank you, Mark Andrews.
Yeah.
So Mark Andrews was pretty much his bailout. So, and if I'm not mistaken, Andrews hasn't really been targeted that much from Lamar Jackson. It's been pretty much the whole Hollywood Brown, Lamar Jackson show. So I'm hoping that continues, because if that's the case, Hollywood Brown, he's a fast wide receiver, don't get me wrong, but the Broncos defense is more than capable, especially the secondary is more than capable of keeping him bottled up. So if you bottle up a guy like Hollywood Brown, and then you force Lamar Jackson to turn to his tight end and Mark Andrews, that's where I believe Patrick Surtain will have his first test in terms of trying to cover a really good tight end before we have to go and face one Travis Kelce. So that's going to be a really interesting test for Patrick Surtain this coming Sunday.
It all depends on where we choose to put Patrick Surtain. In my opinion, I think the better coverage guy for Hollywood Brown is Bryce Callahan. And if Callahan is on Hollywood Brown, in my opinion, the sacks there are sorry, not the sacks, but the picks. I believe at least one of those is going to Bryce Callahan. He already showed just how good he was in the Jets game, where he made that play right on the sideline there, right near the in the red zone, or right near the red zone, where he deflected and batted down that pass. That really just showed you just how good Bryce Callahan is as a player. So I actually think Bryce Callahan is probably better suited for that Hollywood Brown matchup. And because Lamar Jackson is going to continuously try to go to him, I think what you're going to end up seeing is maybe by the third quarter or so, Bryce Callahan and Vic Fangio are going to have a bit of a sidebar discussion there at halftime. And I think you're going to start seeing a route or two being jumped by Callahan. So in my opinion, I agree with you. I think there's going to be a couple of those interceptions, but I think it'll come from that slot position, just because that's what Lamar Jackson wants to go to. And I think it'll be Bryce Callahan that probably makes those. There's also a great comment here by Mr. Johnny Bakke. Thank you very much for sticking with us, Johnny. I actually agree. I think this is an important piece. If I can also add on to this, and then I'll throw it back over to you, is I actually think that the important piece here with Lamar Jackson, and we've actually seen this as a bit of a point of contention, is when we're getting pressure up the middle, we need to make sure we slide those middle linebackers following the direction that the quarterback is running in, to kind of keep contained and keep him on the other side of the line of scrimmage when we're getting pressure. We've seen so many of these mobile quarterbacks, especially guys that are as fast as Lamar Jackson, because he is lightning, is they end up getting to the edges. And because we're pushing so much of our defensive line forward, they can't get over to the sideline in order to stop him as he kind of rounds the edge there. So we really need those middle linebackers and safeties to help contain the side of the field that Lamar Jackson runs to try and kind of break around that edge. And if we can do that, I 100% agree with Johnny here that it will be key to make those types of plays to stop the Baltimore Ravens and win that game, which I believe is very doable for us.
Yeah, I totally agree. Before I give my point, I want to highlight this comment from Avatar where he says, we will see Waller before Kelce. And that's true. We will see Waller before Kelce, Avatar. But my whole point on my comment was Travis Kelce is basically Patrick Mahomes' go-to guy. Out of everybody in that KC offense, Kelce, I think, leads in receptions, even more than Tyreek Hill, even more than their other speedy
Watkins.
wide receiver. No, not Watkins. Watkins is in Baltimore now.
Sorry.
McCollman. I forgot his
name. Nicole Hardman.
Yeah. So out of all the wide receivers, and Patrick Mahomes always looks for Kelce. So in the case of the Raiders with Waller was targeted mostly in their first game against the Ravens. But since then, Derek Carr has spread the ball around, and not everybody's getting equal targets, but Derek Carr has not had a specific pick with Waller like Patrick Mahomes is with Kelsey. And Kelsey over Waller, Kelsey killed us more since Patrick Mahomes took over than any other wide receiver or tight end in the AFC West division. So at least to my understanding, I feel like it's always Kelsey catches a ball and he runs for a bunch of yardage, and he always seems to find a hole in no matter what scheme or zone or man the defense runs. So hopefully that changes this year with the way Kansas City is playing. But going back to the Baltimore game, Rich, this is a game where Denver can win. They're even favored as not underdogs, but they're favored to beat the Ravens because the Ravens they're hurt. And I'm pretty sure Lamar Jackson in that Lions game did not look like he was at 100%. It looked like he was still reeling from that flip where he injured his hip against Kansas City. So we don't know how he'll be when this coming Sunday, but I would like to think that he's not at exactly 100%, and he's going to have to kind of watch his runs, watch how he gets hit. If he has to slide, kind of slide with maybe his other hip or dive forward, which is really dangerous for quarterbacks when they dive because they can get hit and not be so very well protected. But I do agree with what Johnny said, putting pressure on Lamar Jackson and forcing him to throw the ball, which is where we know he's like the most uncomfortable in because he doesn't really know how to get into his reads. He probably stares down his receivers more than many people will admit. So if the Broncos front defense can do that and pressure him and get him to make those mistakes like he did against the Raiders, where even if he doesn't throw the ball, he takes a sack, that's a win for the defense. And that's a great starting point for the Broncos offense when the ball gets kicked over to us.
So I guess what you're saying is that Lamar Jackson isn't going to be doing that Dak Prescott and Eli Manning hip exercise?
He probably might. But...
Was that what you're saying? We're not going to see that pregame? He's not going to pull the Shakira?
He might if it's not copyrighted, but I don't think anybody can do it better than Dak.
Well, nobody can do it better than Dak, but man, Eli tried, and he had those like super tight jeans on, which was hilarious. It was just, you kind of wondered, like, you were in the NFL, okay? Because he looked awfully slim in those jeans. But I actually think this is a great comment right near the back end of the show here. With regards to lightness of schedule, I think this has come up multiple times in forums, on multiple NFL kind of shows and whatnot, in terms of just saying the Broncos are really not getting the current respect that, say, the Raiders are getting right now, because the Raiders played two teams that are seen as being generally upper tier teams, and they won. And the Broncos have kind of played combined, basically winless teams thus far. I think a lot will come down to the Ravens game in terms of how a lot of those other analysts will view the Denver Broncos. I think that if the Denver Broncos come out and beat the Baltimore Ravens and do so, even if it's not in the same fashion that we've seen as the Denver Broncos beat, say, the Jets, for example, which, let's be honest, you're not blowing out teams like that very often. I think the Denver Broncos will start getting the respect that they deserve within the media by saying, okay, they just beat the Baltimore Ravens. That's a legit team, a franchise that have been storied for quite a number of years now. And they've been able to, more importantly, sustain success and do so even through quarterback transitions. So I think it's super, super important that the Broncos show out in this game versus the Ravens. This may be one of the most important games, in my opinion, actually, of the Broncos season, because this is that make or break. This is all right, this team that we're going up against has won the majority of the games rather than lost all of them or the majority of their games. So this is a really big kind of pivotal point in our season for our Denver Broncos. And do I think it matters if they were dominant wins or not? Yes, because good teams blow out really bad teams. And we saw that with the Philadelphia Eagles and the Cowboys last night. Did you think the Eagles had a shot? Because I didn't. So, I mean, it was, it was literally just a clinic on how to beat a team and make them look bad, right? So, in my opinion, I think that this Ravens game is going to define what the analysts think of the Denver Broncos, truly. and we can go from there.
Yeah. Before I answer, I just want to answer this question from KB. What's up with the bill on my hat? I forgot to change hats, and this is my work hat. So the bill, this is the very first Broncos hat I ever owned because I never used to buy hats. I never wore hats. So I've had this hat for years. The bill is all messed up, and I forgot to change hats because I was running late before we got to the start of the show. So by the time I realized I had the wrong hat, I was like, oh, well, forget it. So I do apologize that the bill on my hat is all crooked and messed up, but it's here. So, and it's one of my favorite hats still, even though it's old. But anyway, going back to the Johnny Baki comment, I want to channel my inner Baki and do what he always does because I love when he does it. When he just grabs a beer bottle and goes. So I think that a win over the Baltimore Ravens would kind of just like silence all the haters because it's all we've been hearing from most of the, not just analysts, but just like from people that aren't even, and even some Broncos fans who are doubting this team saying, oh, here come the Ravens, here come the Steelers, here come the whatever. And I personally, I'm not worried because the Ravens aren't the team that we saw in preseason. They're hurt. They're really depending on Lamar Jackson to be everything, kind of like how the Chiefs want Patrick Mahomes to be everything. And as we've seen over the last 3 weeks, Rich, as great as Patrick Mahomes can be, he can't do everything by himself. When he throws interceptions, the defense has to go out there. And right now, the Kansas City defense is terrible. The worst they've looked since 2017, if I'm not mistaken, I've been hearing. So I think that the Ravens are going to try to cover and mask up for their weaknesses by just trying to sprinkle some Lamar Jackson magic on it and hope that Justin Tucker can kick another 66-yard field goal and win it in Mile High. But I just don't see that happening. I think that the Broncos defense is going to do what they've been doing for the last 3 weeks, where they'll bend, but they don't break. And that's exactly what they need to do. Bridgewater is going to just keep playing fantastic football because the Ravens defense, they're hurting. I don't believe they have Jimmy Smith. Marcus Peters is still out. And their key defensive players, their secondary is a lot more beat up than they let on. Their front D is pretty good. I'm not going to lie.
Good.
And, this is, if I'm not mistaken, this is Derek Wolf's return to Denver, not as a Bronco. So
that's assuming he's able to make it back because there was questions whether or not he was actually able to play or not.
Yeah, I think he's questionable now that you mention it. So with that being said, and Johnny Baki brings up as we get to the end of the show here, final score predictions. I believe that Denver wins this game. I'm going to say 28-26 or 25. 20-25. They win by a field goal, I'd say. Is my prediction.
I actually think that we're going to be able to pull ahead a little bit more. So I'm gonna call a kind of a few things into kind of perspective in this game. I think our defense is going to be able to put some additional pressure because I believe Fangio's probably been holding a few things back, waiting for some of these better teams in this gauntlet that we have coming up. So I think he's going to be holding back a little bit. I would love to see that, by the way. McManus hitting a 68-yarder. That'd be fitting. I'm going to go ahead and say that this is a 31-21 game for the Broncos. Ooh. I think that there's a potential that the Ravens, just because they are a better team that I think their record really shows and what they put on film so far, I think there's a potential that they can get to like 31-28. But I believe that if they do get to that 28 number, that it'll be more in a garbage time touchdown where the Broncos are literally just playing not to lose.
Correct. And as we look at some scores here, the boss said 21-17 Broncos. Avatar says 24-14 Broncos. And Landon Clark, WizKid, says 21-14. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say Broncos. So, yes, guys, unfortunately, that's going to have to do it for today's show. Rich and I would like to thank everybody in the chat today that was able to make it. We love you guys. We appreciate the support you've been giving us, and we hope you continue to show your support as the season rolls on. So before Rich and I sign out, just want to go over a couple of things with you guys. Make sure you guys tune in next week on Broncos Talk. We go live every single Tuesday at 7654 on YouTube, Facebook, and all other social media platforms. So make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, click on notifications so you know that when we go live. Also, make sure you guys tune in for the MHRT podcast, which airs every single Thursday at 7654 with the boss Mundungus. He's going to be there sitting in his lovely, nice mansion. Don't let the wood panel fool you. That house is gigantic. Of course, Glenn Hauser, who still owns the biggest Broncos museum in the history of Broncos country, as well as myself, and of course, Mr. Boggins. And then again on Friday, we have the Nothing Rhymes with Orange and Blue podcast with our good friend Johnny Baki, who you've seen here in the chat, as well as his co-host Isaiah Pookie Williams, who are going to give us all the Broncos inside news as we get closer to game day. And speaking of game day, Rich, don't forget the Neigh-borhood, which goes on live just before every Broncos game, is on every single, well, I was going to say every single Sunday, but I retract that. It go live just before every Broncos game. So make sure you guys tune in so you get to see who's on the show, because it's always a different cast. It's always a surprise. So, and you get all the latest notifications on who's in, who's out, who's hurt, and what the guys think the going outcome for the game will be. So
let's not forget that for Broncos home games, you also get a sideline reporter in the Mile High Prophet who comes live to you on the Neigh-borhood as well. We got a great insight into that tailgate on the first Broncos home game of this season. That is a great video. If you have not seen the Neigh-borhood from this past Sunday, absolutely check that out.
Amazing. And yes, that's true. So make sure you guys tune into the Neigh-borhood so you can get all of that nice info and see the tailgate report for every Broncos game with the Mile High Prophet. So with that being said, Richie and I are going to sign out. But before we go, Richie, we have to do the MHRT pastime. So Richie, are you ready? All right, everybody, let's do it. Mile High Five. Woo! Let's go, baby. Have a good night, Broncos country. We will see you next time. Hasta luego.